brought to you by Knights of Awakening. This is the Labyrinth.
Welcome everyone to a special request Labyrinth. Yes, that's right. This is actually an episode that is being done by special request. What you would do to connect with gods and goddesses, or to find your god or goddess more effectively. So gods and goddesses and making the connection is the topic of the day, and I want to thank Lee for giving us that topic because it's a really good one. And it's one that we have not really covered that much of, though the basics involved have been went over in every Labyrinth episode up to date. And this is a point that I want to hit on first and foremost with any form of mysticism. The basics don't change. The basics are always the same. This is kind of the same as in martial arts. Footwork will always be important. Knowing where your positioning is, harnessing power, leverage, timing, these things are universal to every art form, to every technique, to everything really. So, with this, the act of mysticism is no different. The act of spirituality is no different. The basics of it remain the same. So the very first basic is we've got to understand that working with any god or goddess is a form of sympathetic mysticism or sympathetic magic. You're building a connection. And yeah, for those who don't believe in magic, you're probably listening to the wrong show. So, that said, building a connection with gods or goddesses, the very first thing you want to do is really get into the mythology. I mean, make this a study. You want to put in, at least 15 minutes a day reading some of the old lore, some of the old legends, reading up on your god or goddess. You want to put in some real dedicated study time. You're trying to build a connection here. You're trying to make a link to this thing. You need to make that link in the first resource you have available, which is your mind. Now that said, I suppose I should say a little bit on my view of gods and goddesses and spiritual entities of all kinds. Any entity without a body, I think even every entity with a body to some degree, exists in three places, you could say. The first place that an entity exists at any one time is in the mind of the person contacting it. Now, a lot of people are going to say that I just backpedaled on a lot of things as it concerns entities, spirits, spirit guides, gods, goddesses, demons, angels, and the whole kit and caboodle. And the truth is, I haven't backpedaled at all. The truth, if you can handle the truth, is that this first connection is the only natural connection you have with anything. When you look at a person, the person you look at first is the person that exists in your mind. With gods, goddesses, entities, etc., then there is what I would say, the presentation, or the god or goddess that lives in the mind of the world. This is what has created the culture around this god or goddess. This is that idea. This is what makes Thor have red hair and not blonde. Or in the case of Marvel Comics and what they've done with the image of Thor, might make Thor have blonde hair to someone envisioning them. Because all of the resources point to this idea. And in that, this idea becomes real in itself. Now the last part with this sympathetic building up, because that's what these two things are, is the sympathetic build-up, to the last, which is the true god or goddess. And the truth is, Thor probably doesn't have hair. Not in the sense that we see it. The truth is that description may be how Thor presents himself to the world. But the truth is, as a spiritual entity, just as all of us are using our bodies as a tool, that tool to Thor is not much more than a tool. It's much like his hammer. Albeit a much more useful, much more versatile hammer, still just a hammer. So, those are the three levels at which we connect with any god, and most people connect on the first one and the second one, and very rarely, unless you feel the power of an entity moving through you, do you connect with the third. So, building up this link, you've got to realize you're building up the first two parts of the link, and stories, lore, mythology, history. Read up about how this god was worshipped. Read up about what they were. Build a connection to your god. Build a connection to your goddess. But what if you don't know who or what your god or goddess is? This is a rough one. The act of searching often yields the best results. And what I mean by that is the effort put in, assuming you're actually putting effort in, assuming you really, truly, honestly want to know, is going to have one of the biggest impacts on finding your god or goddess, because you will see signs. You will see things, and the thing is, they may not necessarily be signs from above. They may instead be things that your mind is now picking on to. You know, things that your mind is now making note of. Things that your mind is now categorizing in a way that it may not have categorized before. So, there are more signs from within. Like a phone call to yourself. Instead of this vast and grand, power of the gods, it's more than likely what's happening is your mind is picking up on the details. And that is guided, to some degree. That is guided by that entity. They are definitely, once you're looking for them, the one that you're most aligned with is looking for you. And it's going to present symbols and signs. It's going to present things to get your attention, to draw you towards that. And in drawing you towards it, your sympathetic link becomes stronger. Now, that is the first thing. The second thing is to start looking up the properties of gods and goddesses that draw your attention. Start looking up for things that you find valuable, and recognize that no deity are you going to match up with as a personality test. You're not looking for a clone of yourself. What you're looking for is something that you would fight for or fight with. Think of a god or a goddess as your commanding officer, your highest ranked individual. If you are a soldier within the army of their existence, of the world that they represent, they are your general. They are your 5-star general. They are the force that moves you. They are that power that inspires you, and thereby they're not going to be exactly like you. For this, I will use some examples. Thor, if there's ever a god that I relate to, it is Thor, because he is kind and he is compassionate. And when he is angry, he is very angry. When he feels love, he feels it with all of his heart. When he feels hate, he feels it with all of his heart. He is a god that I sync up with in those ways, and I am inspired by the concept, by the idea, by the very essence of Thor himself, And no, this is not an episode to just praise Thor. I probably should do a praise Thor episode at some point, but I just don't feel you would get anything. My point is, Thor is also the grand drinker of the gods. I mean, Thor! That sound of thunder that is produced. That sound of raw power that kicks in. That is not the sound of lightning striking. That is the sound of the force of the impact of the mead as it hits the back of his throat and rumbles down to his stomach with such force. Thor is the primary drinking god of the world. He is. His first role is obviously god of war and god of thunder, and then, god of alcohol, much like most of the Norse pantheon. And that's kind of demeaning. The truth is, I could get into the full Norse pantheon for you, but it's a lot more complex than the simple little jokes I make here. So all of that, and using Thor as an example, Thor is the drinking god. Thor hammers one back every hour on the hour, hammers one back every minute on the minute. Thor does not carry a large glass. He carries a keg in one hand, and he drinks it before the hour is up. That's nothing like me. I've been known to have a drink or two here and there, but, I may touch a little bit of alcohol once every couple months, every 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months maybe. Maybe less, maybe more, depending on my mood. But I really don't indulge all that often. So, using this as an example, Thor is by no means a carbon copy of me, nor am I a carbon copy of Thor. But there are certain traits that are so connected that mean so much to both of us that there is this natural alignment of energies that occurs, and this is why Thor is my god. You know, knowing Thor, knowing how he thinks, how he reacts, knowing his version of cleverness, knowing his understanding of the world, really, those are the things that inspire me. Those are the things that lift me up. But that's not going to be for everyone. So, this is not a Praise Thor Day. It could be, but it's not. No, today we're talking about helping you find your god or your goddess. And with this, recognize there are going to be some traits you don't necessarily like. And good examples of this would be, say your god was Odin. Odin is very selfish. For everything that he is in kindness and compassion, in warrior spirit, in mysticism, he's also very selfish, very tricky, very sly, and very conniving, and very, very focused on only himself. You may not sync up with that. You may sync up with everything else. You may be the premier in mysticism. You may be a fighter and warrior. You may be all of these things. You may be like, oh, Father, if only you weren't such an asshole sometimes, I could worship you. But the thing is, finding a god or goddess doesn't mean worshiping in the traditional throwing your life to them. It means you found something that you connect to. And building that connection means there's going to be times when you don't agree with your god or goddess. There's going to be times when, if you're living life truly, there are going to be times when you say the Conan prayer. You tell them to F off and leave you alone. You tell them that you're not interested in what they say or what they do or what they're doing or what they're saying, and it's just the way it is. So, with finding a god or goddess, you've got to recognize that they can still be yours even when all of their actions, all of their methods, all of their whatever aren't. Now, natural connection will overrule everything else. What I mean by that is, let's say you make yourself a cleric of Ares. There's a war god that's I don't know enough about. But let's say you devote your life to Ares. Better yet, Zeus. I know a good bit about Zeus. Let's say you devote your entire life to Zeus, but you've got a natural connection to, we'll pick one from a different pantheon, Tyr. So, you're devoting to Zeus, you're doing all these things for Zeus's favor, you're trying to stay in good with Zeus, you are trying to stay a proper worshiper, but you're also trying to seek guidance from, you're building up a repertoire of communication, be it through sacrifice or ceremony, be it through prayer or insight, be it through meditation or whatever you're doing. And all of those were good ideas. You should be writing this down. Whatever it is you're doing to build up this repertoire with this god, you then have dreams of Tyr all the time. There's this one-handed god who's following you around in your dreams, and, suddenly you are filled with this inspired need. You stand there, and it's like you're standing atop a mountain when you look out at the world, and the only thing you want is to draw your sword and yell, "For justice!" Well, Tyr's probably your god. And you may worship other gods, but you're never going to have a strong connection as you do to Tyr at that point. You're never going to make a connection stronger than the natural one. So natural connection overrides everything else. Natural connection will override worship, self-reprogramming, and you can try to get around it. And if anyone wants to know how to try to get around it, I'll do a show one day. That one will have to be a request show, because it's not gonna be one I'm just gonna do because it's not valuable as a tool unless someone specifically needs it. As a tool, what would be more valuable to be understand where your dissonance is with Tyr and hash things out. Go on a vision quest, go into a deep meditative trance. When this world has disappeared and another world exists, you are then there. Once you are there, wherever there is, be it Asgard, be it Olympus, be it the Four Corners, be it a watchtower of the Four Corners, wherever it is you're going to, you get there. through deep meditative trance, through visualization, through focus. Could take an hour to get you there. You might be there for 10 minutes and it feel like an hour, and it might take you an hour to get there for that 10 minutes. It's going to be rough. It's going to be something you've got to do. But once you get there, once you put yourself there, now it's time to hash some things out. It's time to discuss this with your God. It's time to find out what it is that is causing this disconnect between you and them, and to work on that. So if you've got that natural connection and you're running away from it, don't run away from it. Run towards it and find out why the hell you're being a coward. That said, you really got to look at all of this as a work of tools. And in that, we'll take our brief commercial break, maybe we'll say about 30 seconds here. Folks, as for tools, we have tools in the show store, if you notice. Some mind teas, which are excellent methods of guided meditation. It's a method of meditation that never goes out of style. And as I've done my own searching for guided meditation, I can tell you that while, yeah, you can find a lot of stuff on YouTube, you're not going to find anything of the same quality as what we're offering. If you do, you're only going to find one piece or one work at the same quality. We're working on offering custom teas. If you'd be interested in those, I'll put this out there, even though Justin hasn't given me permission. Email us at koahosts@koaaxiom.com. That's koahosts@koaaxiom.com. Not but koahosts@koaaxiom.com. The email link should be at the bottom of your page on the main page. And we look forward to hearing from you. You know, you put in a request for a mind tea and Justin will get back to you with the costs. So, really, honestly, and truly, folks, tools are a big part of this. Tools are a big part of connecting to a God. And what that means is keeping that God's symbols around. Keeping in the spirit of that God. Focusing on the things that connect you to that God. Making yourself one with that God. You know, directing your attention to that God daily. Wear your Thor's hammer. Wear your pentacle. Wear your cross. Wear whatever it is you wear. You know, enchant your jewelry. Focus on your God, on a piece of jewelry that you're going to keep. Make that your symbol for your God. I don't care what you do, but get a symbol first and foremost. Something that you can keep with you to keep that connection, to mentally remind you, to make it physical. Because the human mind works in physical realities. And the truth is, while the gods are real and strong and vital, they work through the physical world as much as we do. Maybe more in some ways. Because they do not have the body to manipulate events. They manipulate probability. They manipulate possibility. They inspire. They direct. With that, I also should say that if you're not looking for a God, you know, you're not looking to build up that connection, and I've given you a lot of methods for building up that connection, but the main thing is a combination of research and connectivity. You know, go and do stuff. I don't care if it's trace over a picture of your god or goddess so that you can draw it and then color it in and hang it on your wall so that your god or your goddess knows that you care that much, that you are invested in them. You know, saying that, I've also got to say, if you're not looking to connect to a god or goddess, don't take this show as to mean that you should be. Don't take anything I've said over the past few minutes to say that that's the important thing to do in your life. The truth is, if it's important to do in your life, you're going to start doing it. The truth is, what you want is a basic introduction to it. What you want is something to get your foot in the door. And I'm telling you, the way to get your foot in the door is to put your foot through the door. But if you're not looking for that, don't worry. Gods and goddesses are strong allies, powerful entities, forces to be reckoned with, and yet I have seen great men do amazing things with no god, no goddess. I have never seen any man, I should say I've never seen any god or goddess do anything without a man as a focal point. And I don't mean necessarily to guide their action. It may not be that God makes that man run over and stitch up the wound, but there's someone somewhere who believed in that God. Even if it was just in that moment that it was presented to them, and they're like, I see it, I know its name, and it commands me to do this. It still moved through that person to use the healing energy. It didn't act externally. And I'm going to get a lot of flack from people on this saying it that way, and I'm totally ready for it. So bring it, cupcakes. You send your hate mail to KOA Axiom, or KOA hosts at KOAaxiom.com. Send your angry letters. Send them to me so I can revel in the joyous hatred that you will send for me saying this. But your gods and your goddesses, for as important as they are only important so long as they're important to you. So long as they inspire you to get up and get stronger, to be better and be more. And you can be more. You can improve your life. You can do great things. And greatness is measured not by the world, but by the individual. Sometimes just being a good father is the greatest thing you can do. Or sometimes just being the best friend is the greatest thing you can do in this world. And that means that sometimes that is the path you must take. So, to recap, just to sum it up, make sure I've covered all the bases. You're going to build a link with your god and goddess. This is going to be through the mythology, the stories, focusing on your god or goddess, communicating with them through prayer and meditation, focusing on symbols and symbology, connecting to them on a daily practice. Make a ritual that you can do every morning, even if all it is to turn to one direction in the sky and bow in that direction, knowing that your God is looking there, waiting for you to say, yes, you are my God, and I love you, and you love me, and there is this connection and this strength, and I draw strength from you, but also your strength moves through me to make the world a better place. If that is all you do that morning, that is something, and it will lead to bigger things, so long as you let it, and let it lead to bigger things. You're going to become a worshiper of Thor, you're going to want to get stronger. Thor is a masculine, strong entity, so says the man whose arm curl has increased by something like 20 pounds in the past year. That's the kind of thing you do. You build that connection and you focus on that connection. If your god or goddess is a goddess of water, then you want to focus on filling your life with water. You want to take long baths. You want to drink plenty of water. Hot tea, you want to meditate in a somewhat damp environment. You want to work with those properties. You want to make that connection in as many ways as you can. If your god or goddess is a god of fire, then you're going to want fire to be a part of your life. You're going to want to light candles daily. You're going to want to be the person who is burning incense all the time, lighting the candles. Yeah, I know the metaphysics shop will love you, so will the dollar store, because candles are $1 there. My point, and my point stands, is the connection is simple. It's obvious. It really is. And if you can't make that connection, then you're not looking deep enough at the basic cultural significance of the god or goddess. But isn't that just self-mind trickery? Self-mind fuckery? Yes, it is to some degree. Because that same self-mind trickery, self-mind fuckery is what you use to lift weights. Because you're convincing yourself that something that did not happen yesterday can happen today. And yeah, you have scientific evidence to prove it, but you also have a lot of spiritual and philosophical evidences from the communities therein that prove that this method for connecting to gods works too. So I'm telling you, this is no different than arm curls, but this is the spiritual arm curl. This is no different than the overhead press, but this is the spiritual overhead press. This is no different than sword fighting, but this is the spiritual sword fighting. This is no different than running, but this is the spiritual running. This is no different than anything else you've done in your life at all. It's not different at all. But what it is it's focusing on something you may not have focused on before. You may not be 120% comfortable focusing on. So what you're really looking for at the end of the day is not for me to tell you how to connect to your god or goddess or how to find them, even though I've done that. What you're really looking for, and this isn't aimed at Lee because he was the one who requested this episode, this is aimed at everyone out there. What you're looking for is you're looking for good old Chuck to say, it's okay, yeah, you can have a god or goddess. It doesn't make you weak. It might even make you strong. You're looking for good old Chuck to tell you that it's fine, whatever your god or goddess is, whatever you're drawn to, whatever is drawn to you, is okay. What if it's Loki? Well, then it's Loki. You know, Loki wasn't that bad of a guy if you read the stories from a certain point of view. Oh, well, Obi-Wan Kenobi just took over my head. But no, seriously, you know, Loki wasn't a bad guy from a certain point of view. Neither was Hades from a certain point of view. Neither was Hel, as in Hela. You know, all of these gods and goddesses have their high points and their low points, and whichever one you're called to, that's what you're called to. So long as they make you stronger. So long as it makes you a better person, able to do more in this world, able to generate positive change, able to do those things that mean something to you and your life. And I don't care if it means anything to anyone else's life. Does it mean something to you in your life? Because if it does, and it makes that positive change for you in a way that means something, then it is one step closer to being able to awaken the night within.